Eric, hi. It's wonderful to have you here. I am super excited. If people can't tell, I'm not even caffeinated. I'm just in your presence. And that is because people noticed when you came last year to Toronto, just the bromance that had blossomed naturally between us, and how basically I think a lot of people don't realize myself and Eric kind of had an existential crisis. We had to face our realities of who we were. We went and watched a movie together just called Hereditary. It's not really worth getting into what happened. Needless to say, we realized the utter emptiness of everything around us. And so we try to cling to the only thing that gave us meaning.
Yeah, we were on the brink of nihilism or nihilism, but it doesn't really matter how you pronounce it because nothing matters.
Because nothing matters in the end. And so lifting is what we gravitated back towards. And we're like, this gives our life meaning. And so I've always enjoyed your work. For those that aren't aware, Eric Helms is the man because not only is he intellectually honest, he has contributed a hell of a lot to the lifting community. He's been doing this thing all the way back when he had a username of Aquelius. Am I saying that right?
I mean, you added a few syllables, but you got the center part right. So.
Yeah. Equel?
Yeah, it's Equel. But my username was actually Quelly, which is a derivative of Equel. But
right.
We don't need to get into all that.
So Eric has been in the community for a long time, pursuing his education. He's gotten his PhD. He's been contributing heavy to the community. You were one of the important figures that helped give attention to the concept of flexible dieting or less restrictive eating. Also popularizing with 3DMJ, which you helped start, the concept that strength was important for natural athletes, and overall just providing a wide array of immediately useful information to the masses. And that's always been what you've done and how you operate. And I know from being not in a similar position, but working online, how it's quite frankly, it's lucrative. I don't want to say to sell out, but to, water down your message, to accept certain things, to shift directions because you see what's more profitable. And you've just been plowing away year after year, providing great information. So you're someone that I look up to in the industry. And so I think it's fantastic to have you on board, us being co-pilots on this new journey.
Hey, man, I guess I have to spend the next 10 minutes now, praising you. And I will do that. Yeah, you could. No, but in all seriousness, it's been a huge honor to come out to Toronto, and the times that you've had Berto on, myself, we greatly appreciated that to help us affect our little community of drug-free lifters and bodybuilders at 3DMJ. It's something we care passionately about, and it's a group of people we're trying to positively affect and provide community support to, and something I've been doing for a long time. And so I appreciate the respect. I appreciate the acknowledgement I've just been trying to do my thing and staying focused on that. And I think you're a great example of that as well. There's not many YouTube channels that have been around for a decade this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, so 3DMJ is having its 10-year anniversary, and so is Omar telling you to like the damn video. So
I was 12 when I started, and I didn't know what I was doing. And I wore shirts that were way too tight, but that's neither here nor there.
Well, that's what you do before you have the muscle. Then once you have the muscle, then you can wear shirts that are way too loose and show a nipple. It's kind of like this progression of shirts.
Oh, no. What you realize is that when you start lifting, Eric, so that was me without having a body dysmorphia, just free and loving my body and accepting it. When you start lifting, you realize that you'll never be big enough. And that's when you start wearing bigger and bigger shirts to hide your body because you never want to show it off in public.
Oh, that's the whole reason I started my education. I realized that I couldn't have the physique I wanted, so I would just sound smart to preserve my ego. And that's basically, my entire career is based on that. So teeter-tattering on the edge at all times. It's good. It's good stuff.
I was going to say, Eric, just a quick question I'm going to ask you. Of course, there'll be a bias involved, but on stage, looking yucky because you're competing this year, who would have a better physique? Chris Evans in Winter Soldier or whichever film that you want to say, or you on stage, because you have similar stats, I believe. Like you're 6 feet, 6'1". Chris Evans is like the same. Like you guys have a similar height, similar age. He's a few years older, I think, than you. You got a fantastic physique. He has CGI on his side. Who would win if it's just like, bam, you both step on stage? What's going down?
Sans CGI?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I think I would probably get him in some of the more bodybuilder-y poses that highlight like legs and like lower back development. I think shoulders and arms stuff, he would probably win. Like most muscular, maybe a lat spread. I think he'd handle me. But overall, I think I just don't think I don't think he'd get as lean.
Right.
I think, yeah. So
he ain't willing to eat that tilapia 6 days a week.
That's right.
I said 6 weeks.
Just have a fish and a rice cake and nothing else. So.
I said 6 days a week because, of course, on the 7th day you don't eat. That's when you reset the gastric system.
Yeah, it's like the opposite of a refeed. It's a full fasting day.
Well, Eric, just think you could get that much leaner, man, if you do it that way.
If I wasn't screwing around with refeeds like an idiot.
That's almost like that would be a useful topic for this podcast, which I guess brings me to the point for everyone listening, for everyone watching. We're super excited to announce this new podcast, Iron Culture. It's something we've been working on for quite some time. It basically spawned from conversations that we had where Eric is a philosophical person. He's introspective, questioning, why we lift in the first place. And Eric actually had a series on his Instagram chronicling pre-social media, pre-IG, the ascension of certain lifters throughout time, the history of lifting culture as a whole. Eric also showcased other countries, so India in the 1930s. But it really gives perspective in terms of, one, how long people have been lifting, two, the desires or the reasons, the motivations why people lift, and three, how there's a lot of common threads within this lifting community that most people don't realize. And there's almost been a fracturing over time that we seek to erase. So the idea behind this Iron Culture podcast is to educate, to inform, to trace the roots of lifting, as well as get into the philosophical journey of why we lift in the first place.
I think you said that really well, Omar. And I think, I have found a lot of meaning in my life looking at the history of lifting, because you can see how deep it is and how much striving and movement are part and parcel of being human, and can serve as doing so much more than changing the way you look or what you can do physically. And it's something that I think is like among 3D in 3D Muscle Journey. It's something we've been all about, and before I even became aware of the history, which is just cool to think that, we've been trying to teach people about the dedication, desire, and discipline, and focusing on the journey rather than the destination, and trying to create a community, and, doing things like creating a code of ethics and trying to inspire athletes and people to be better humans and bring what they learn through the process of striving and bodybuilding into their lives in general. And then when I start reading the history, I find that there's a lot of deep roots in what became bodybuilding, what was originally physical culture. So it's something that I think is lost today. Like there is not that same kind of middle ground where people who are not competitors take their lifting extremely seriously, base their life around it, but also they bring it into their life, and then they become entrepreneurs, better women and men, better humans, and hopefully better fathers or mothers or spouses, etc. And just they consider it a pursuit intellectually, spiritually, maybe, if that's for them, and definitely like emotionally and culturally. So I think that's something that's just not talked about enough. It's not really on the radar. And you're right. You can walk into any bodybuilding or lifting centric like social media account, and if someone brings up CrossFit, even in a positive way, you can guarantee there will be one negative comment, or even just playful ribbing among weightlifters and powerlifters, or between powerlifters and bodybuilders. And I think even when there is just that playful ribbing, that's fine, but there's very often not much sharing of information or experience or perspective. I always find it funny when you see bodybuilders like afraid of overtraining from doing the same muscle group twice in a week, and weightlifters look up and they're like, "What are you talking about?" So that kind of thing, I think, is overall, detrimental to the lifting culture and just everyone's individual progress. While I do think specialization is important at a certain point in someone's career and depending on their goals, I think just a complete lack of awareness and communication with other people who lift weights in a slightly different way is not helpful. So I hope we can bridge some gaps.
And in a genuine way, I think you nailed it, Eric, when you said that, where we're all trying to become better physically. And that's why when we get into the origins of, Western physical culture in the late 1800s, the early 1900s, when they drew a lot of inspiration from the Greek concept of aesthetics, it was a self-betterment that was tied both physically and then mentally in terms of what you're doing. So the character of oneself. And so how we conduct ourselves, how we communicate with one another, what we look for, where I think we can see sometimes on social media, people will give some platitudes, or like, oh man, we all just got to get along, we all lift. It's like, well, let's find out what are the connections that, in terms of what we do and why we do it in the first place. And so we can have conversations with other people that might not have the exact same positions as us. And that's why on this, podcast, we're going to have a variety of different guests. We talked about the history of lifting, but also getting into the science of lifting, where people that have different perspectives. So pro bodybuilders or individuals that are not natural, for people that have also, we could talk about nutrition, the ketogenic diet, having someone to talk about that, when that would be optimal, when it wouldn't be optimal, different strategies. And so just people in different disciplines or different pursuits, understanding each other a little bit better, and then realizing at its core, we're all just trying to improve ourselves physically and mentally.
Yeah, I think we're trying not to leave any part of the Venn diagram untouched, really. Yeah. And I think the history is probably the best place to start, which is where we're going to initiate this podcast. Because if you can understand where you came from, that's really the only way you can know what you actually don't know, is to know, all right, if I operate within a fractured community and I'm in some portion of it, I'm in some corner, because of the fracturing is only spread over time, then that means I'm simply unaware of some of these other silos or some of these, if you will, tribes, and what wisdom they might have, or what experience they might have, and vice versa. And so if you don't know how the continents have spread apart, we got to go back to Pangea. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
So yeah.
I don't know what you're saying though, because Earth is only 8,000 years old. So and that's what's wonderful. We might have a difference of opinion. It's an opinion more than it's a fact, right?
Right. Yes. I appreciate that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Your truth is just as true as anyone else's truth.
That's and what is truth?
It's all subjective,
Yeah. No, Eric, you're wrong. It's all meaningless. That's what we learned from Hereditary.
Yeah.
Right. No, so we're excited because, like I said, I've had recently a renewed passion for my lifting, where on my journey, I actually went through a little bit of injury, some setbacks where things were going very well. And then realizing, basically, I think a common thread for both of us is that we're lifelong lifters. If Instagram wasn't around, if our career didn't revolve around it, we chose something that was complementary because we liked lifting so much. But even if our profession wasn't related to lifting, we would still lift. And so discovering those whys, digging even deeper, because now I've been lifting, for 10 years. And then discovering also how common some of those goals are when we take a look at the history of lifting. So where we came from and then where we're going, and also get to the better values maybe of what lifting should be about when you talk about. And that's why you have 3DMJ, it's dedication, desire, discipline. Those are big words. It's not just like, let's get shredded, bro. Let's do it for beach season. So for people that are lifelong lifters, I think they're going to find a lot of utility learning the history of lifting, and then also the topics. And maybe Eric, what would you say for those listening out there in terms of some of the topics that we'd be getting into besides the history? Because we're going to do a several-part series on the history of lifting for physical culture, and then what else?
Yes, I mean, that's an important thing. Like I said, we're going to hit the whole Venn diagram, and if this podcast is for lifelong lifters, that means that, the very basic or intermediate concepts are things that most of our listeners have probably mastered already. So we're going to be trying to have deeper discussions about things like periodization, nutrition, and we're not going to shy away from nuance. We're going to have, like we said, the origins of physical culture is about bettering yourself everywhere. So it's not about being a Luddite and going, all right, well, I'm just going to do what Sandow did back in the day. Like that's not what Sandow was doing. Sandow was marketing himself as the cutting edge. And we're going to be trying to carry that forward as well. So fortunately, I've been able to stay in academia and really enjoying the process of research and trying to do that. And I have a lot of connections to other people in academia. So we're going to try to get like your expert's expert on to talk about various topics. So we've got a cool discussion lined up around periodization. We've got some other very cool conversations coming up about history, and we've got cool conversations coming up that are more about culture and the choices you make that can affect your direction as a lifter. So we really want to cover it from all angles, and we're going to embed a little bit of science into each episode just to make sure that there's intellectual value in each episode. So
Eric, you nailed it, because that brings us to the subtopic for this first episode. And the first episode would be glutamine. Okay, you were talking to me how Raging Bull was 1979, it's 1980. You owe me a whole bottle, and I want to know if I should be taking it, because it seems like glutamine's one of those supplements where it always enters the conversation, and depending upon who you ask, their answer in terms of what it does is different. And it always kind of comes back every 5 years, Like I remember hearing about it in 2009, and now it's 2019, and I've heard some bodybuilders once again. Can you just define for us what glutamine is and why people even recommend it in the first place?
Yeah, and the funny thing is I was just reviewing an article, and it was I was reviewing an article which had other articles in it, and one of them was a recent survey of bodybuilders, I want to say 2013, and asking them what supplements they take. And something like, I think, between 30 to 40% of the bodybuilders in the off season and in the in season, I think we're taking glutamine. And part of me is just like, really, aren't we past this yet? So to get back to the kind of the set the stage question, glutamine is a non-conditional amino acid, and it's called non-conditional conditional amino acid because it is conditionally necessary. So a conditionally essential amino acid means that it may or may not be needed in large amounts in certain times. So when we talk about something that's essential in nutrition, like an essential amino acid or an essential fatty acid, it simply means that it can't be provided by our body alone. We need to get it from nutrition. So glutamine is heavily involved in the healing process. And it is actually, and here's where the confusion comes in, is that if you were to look up a lot of research on glutamine, you might see some very positive things. And there's actually a robust amount of it. There's a meta-analysis of meta-analyses, which means like this meta, looking at all the different metas of glutamine use in the hospital setting.
Yeah, can you just explain quickly what a meta-analysis is for those that might not be aware?
No, get off my podcast. If you don't know what meta-analysis is, I will never do. No.
There's a certain standard we set. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So a meta-analysis is actually what it sounds like. It is a statistical analysis of a bunch of controlled trials on the same topic that have been organized together to increase the power and the confidence we can have in the conclusions. So a meta-analysis of meta-analyses is someone taking all of those. So it's a ridiculous sample size of information, and you can almost be certain that the conclusions are reasonably accurate if they did their analysis correctly. So in this publication, it was looking at length of hospital stays, healing rates, and a number of other metrics. I think perhaps even fatalities related to injuries in hospitals, and all those metrics were reduced when using glutamine. However, there's a huge important caveat: is that this is intravenous delivery. So injecting glutamine in a clinical setting, and also the population is not someone comes into the hospital and goes, "Hey man, I had a killer bicep workout. I was wondering if I could get that injectable glutamine so that I can recover faster." It is burn victims. It is people with muscle wasting diseases. So the application of glutamine is very much relegated to that sphere. And the initial hypothesis, if you will, of why people should use glutamine in the bodybuilding community was based off knowing that it was a conditionally essential amino acid, knowing that it was involved in healing, and thinking, oh, maybe we can use this for a recovery supplement. And I have nothing against hypotheses, but I think once we've put the nail in the coffin so many times, we kind of have to accept that it's not helpful. So there's now, again, a meta-analysis looking at body composition changes and performance, and we have seen that it doesn't have a significant effect on either. So it's not going to help you get bigger or leaner or lift heavier weights as far as we can tell. If anything, and I'm going out on a limb here, it may be beneficial for digestive health. You may find some slight advantage if you're someone who tends to have digestive issues. Of course, that is a clinical concern. I would definitely, talk to someone about it. And on that note, kind of this is an interesting fact, and the reason why it doesn't really work taken orally is that I think something like 80% of glutamine is absorbed in the gut. So that's why when you take it orally, it never really gets to your muscles to have even the theoretical benefit it might transferring from the clinical to the bodybuilding setting. So what I'm saying is you need to go out and get that injectable glutamine.
All I heard is that you work for Big Pharma. You're trying to deny what's important, which is, quite frankly, glutamine. And I'm just going to get a giant tub. Look, you have your truth. I have my truth. And that's what I'm trying to say, Eric, is we're trying to get to the truth together. So I appreciate the science perspective or whatever, but you still owe me a tub of glutamine. Everyone heard it first at the start of the video.
Hey, you send me my shirt. I'll send you some glutamine.
Ooh, little do people know. Wow. You're going to cut me that deep. I'm a burn victim now, so I'm going to benefit from the glutamine. So joke's on you. I knew you'd like that shitty joke, Eric.
Wow. No, that was really good, though. The speed was good and the topic relevance. So,
thank you.
So that's what's up with glutamine. Yeah. Conditionally essential amino acid might help if you had 30-degree burns all over your body and in the hospital and you're getting it injected. Bigger biceps, not so much. Potential possibility, gut health, but, probably not.
And so that's actually something that's interesting, maybe to close out on this topic for this episode, would be when we examine the history of lifting or lifting culture, we're going to see this time and time again where some sort of new device, so back in the day it was more devices, or then when they talked about boosting testosterone, different strategies, you'll see some sort of thing that will they'll pop up, and everyone will think it's the latest thing. It's marketing, the origins of where bodybuilding marketing comes into play, or lifting as it's related to that. We're going to see time and time again some big hype, real big hype.
Oh, yeah. Sandow's cocoa. I mean, it goes deep.
Yeah. People, so you think, and that's why, I even joke around when I say, how did the fitness industry get like this? Is like, actually, I think maybe because of the motivations why people want to improve themselves, where there's some emotional attachments, we're a little bit more liable to fall for some of these tricks. And that's why they've worked for so long. And that's why maybe the marketing's been there for such a long period of time.
I would agree. It definitely runs deep. And it also comes from it. This is really cool. If you read Randy Roach's Muscle, Smoke, and Mirrors, it comes from an era where right now we were kind of joking about the conspiracy theorists who would be like, no, you're just trying to suppress the information about glutamine. You're the medical elite who's trying to take advantage of us for no motivation I can actually articulate. But it's definitely true. Yeah. There probably was a time in history, closer to the Industrial Revolution, where modern medicine was really no better than just giving people random things, and sometimes harmful. And was that combined with the kind of issue, one of the issues with modern medicine of us being focused more on cures versus prevention. So there was definitely a time when there was a war between preventative medicine and treating at the other end at the end, but there was no effective treatments. So treatment versus prevention medicine has been a battle that's been around for a century, but there was a time when you probably actually did want to be on the preventative medicine side and going with the more quacky things, because at least you were focusing on nutrition and training, and it's only
they're
equally
less harmful.
Yeah,
the
exactly.
Outcomes potentially. Yeah, than being dead.
Yeah, hospitals in 1890, not a place you want to go. Let's just say that.
I'm going to get this really wrong, but I'm just going to say it and you're going to help me recover. What is it's been used for a while. It's some sort of, I think it's a metal. I don't want to say copper. It's not copper. Maybe it's mercury, something.
It is mercury.
It's mercury there. And then how it turns the skin blue or purple over time, but just how it defeats I've seen some crazy things just doing some research when it comes to not only lifting culture, but some of that time period, different marketing things, just how something like that could be marketed to people. It's like, man, if you take too much of this, you'll die.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at medical history, there is some absolute atrocious stuff that was considered mainstream modern medicine, not even quackery. Mercury is a great example. There was this era where like if it did something, it was considered viable medically. And I think it goes all the way back to when like the four humors that was like, bile and like trying to get that out of your system and bloodletting. The whole idea of trying to purify the body to get things out was the way you would treat anything, because there's something wrong with your body, so we got to get something out of it. And so doing things that elicited a physiological effect, even when negative, like, vomiting, diarrhea, bleeding out of your face, like, no, this is working. That's how we know. And it's like, now today
you're
we
getting
know
rid of it.
That's killing you. Like, now you have syphilis and mercury poisoning. This is a bad day for everyone. So
You think it's going to help improve things? It just makes it worse, which is why I love, Eric, how we could talk about different things and come back to the tonic of our conversation, which is why I'm so glad I'm getting that glutamine, to help me recover, emotionally recover from watching that movie Hereditary.
Yeah, I'm going to need glutamine to emotionally recover from your unwillingness not take glutamine, which is
wow.
A lot of irony embedded there. So,
well, I can't wait to get the tub. I can't wait for everyone to see these episodes. We're still determining the upload frequency. We're determining between once every 2 weeks, probably, or maybe once a week. It depends. Launch period, we're probably going to do one time per week and then slow it down. But every single episode, like Eric said, we're going to have guests who are authorities on a variety of different topics. The history of lifting. We have some very cool guests lined up already. And as Eric said, kind of the hype is real when he said your guru's guru, where it's individuals that you might not know about, but the level of information that you'll walk away with, I think, will be astounding.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really excited to get into it. And then we'll probably even figure out like a legit and consistent intro and outro. Like it's going to be like a real podcast.
Yeah, we're real boys. It's a real podcast. It's going to be real glutamine that we sniff at the start, because we want people to know that they have options in life. I just love how we're on the same page, Eric,
You're right. And that's actually a good question. Just, would sniffing increase the bioavailability? Because it's not.
You said injecting,
Yeah, I mean, now I'm actually curious. I'm legitimately curious if some kind of like a nasal delivery would work for glutamine.
Yeah, well, the history of the Earth for the last 8,000 years, it's been incredible watching lifting culture. So I can't wait to get into this. I want to thank Eric for doing this journey with me. I want to thank everyone for listening to this episode. You can help us out, actually, because we have our own YouTube channel that you can subscribe to. It's just Iron Culture Podcast. You could give us a rating and review on iTunes, which does help us out. It helps us when it comes to the algorithm, rankings, and so forth. And tell a friend if you find this information useful. If you find it interesting what we're talking about, consider telling a friend. But we want to thank everyone for listening, and we're going to catch everyone in that next episode of Iron Culture.